Good evening, welcome to Prime Edition. I am Cynthia Nyamai. Now, there is a mysterious disease in the nation. We will be telling you about it and the numbers and what is the government doing about it. And in business, we will be talking about debt measures. That and more coming up shortly, but first, let's have the highlights. What killer disease is this? 4 patients with cholera-like symptoms die in Kakamega.
We're going to reconsider the decision that was made by the government of Kenya 20 years ago or thereabout, not to provide a budget line for the Kenya Red Cross.
A shot in the arm. Government reinstates a Kenya Red Cross budgetary support with 100 million shillings promise. Debt ceiling crisis. We tell you why experts are rooting for the slashing of budget ceiling to 55% of GDP. And 25 years living off coffins. The story of a Narok carpenter behind a thriving coffin-making business. Well, Brian Muraru is my sign language interpreter. And remember, we would like to hear from you. Please do send us your comments and also your feedback on our social media pages. That is on Instagram. We're also on Twitter and on Facebook as KBC Channel 1. And I will be reading some of your comments at the end of the bulletin now. The government has reinstated its budgetary support to the Kenya Red Cross, and President William Ruto says the move has been informed by the huge humanitarian tasks that the society engages in. He said the support will begin in 2023-2024 financial year with an allocation of 100 million shillings. The president noted that the government will continue supporting the Kenya Red Cross in carrying out its work, especially in disaster and emergency services. He was speaking on Thursday during a tour of Kenya Red Cross in South Sea, Nairobi.
The decision that was made by the government of Kenya 20 years ago or thereabout, not to provide a budget line for the Kenya Red Cross, and beginning this year, we will reinstate budgetary support by the government of Kenya to the Kenya Red Cross, beginning with Kenya shillings 100 million this year. Again, we are going to prepare a law to be presented to Parliament to exempt Kenya Red Cross from government levies and some taxes, so that being a government agency, even though performing auxiliary functions, I think Kenya Red Cross qualifies as a government agency established by law, and therefore they deserve relief for them to be able to perform their functions appropriately.
Well, on social media, there was a debate if tomorrow is a public holiday or not. But the office of the Chief Qadi has announced the sighting of the crescent moon. The move signifies the end of the holy month of Ramadan that now paves way for the Eid al-Fitr. Subsequently, the office, through the Deputy Qadi Sukyan Hassan Omar, has declared tomorrow, Friday, as Eid al-Fitr.
Deputy Chief Qadi, in collaboration with various stakeholders, which include fellow Qadis, Muslim religious organizations, scholars, imams, and Muslim population at large, is pleased to announce that upon receiving and verifying information received from various parts of our country, specifically Wajir County, a village called Dilmanyale, where we receive information of sighting of the crescent from 5 gentlemen, and also Elwak, which is within Mandera County. we are satisfied that the crescent of Shawwal have been sighted in those areas. Consequently, it is hereby declared that tomorrow, the Friday, the 21st day of April 2023, will be the first day of Shawwal, the year 1444 al-Hijri, and consequently, the same day will be the Eid al-Fitr. Allahu Akbar wa lillahi alhamd.
Now to a story that we have been following up for you. 4 people have died from a mysterious disease in Mukumu Mission Hospital in Shunyalu constituency, Kakamega County. Residents said the deceased had episodes of vomiting and diarrhea. 3 students and a teacher from the neighboring Mukumu Girls High School died after exhibiting similar symptoms over a week ago.
Kazenga Vikungan Lokose villages in Shinyalu constituency, with residents living in fear of a mysterious disease. The disease, which manifests with diarrhea and vomiting, has claimed 4 lives and left more than 20 people hospitalized at various hospitals in Kakamega County.
Sakina moja ndio tunasikia hatana mse amehaka. Sasa tunaomba tu msaada, yani tunaomba serikali kusaidia. Tujue yani hata ugonjwa yenyewe hatujui shida hatujui hata shida. Tunagonjeka tu hivi haraka.
Tumeogopa. Juu hata ukienda pale hata utagonjeka. Sasa tujue ni maji ndio chafu, ama vyakula ndio ndakula ni chafu, ama ni mazingira gani ambayo iko chafu. Tuambiwe na serikali, na sisi ni Wakenya.
Serikali itupee madaktari wa mjini watutembelee ili tupate kupona. Kama sio hivyo, sisi tutaisha.
Speaking to KBC Channel 1, area legislator Freddy Kana called on the Ministry of Health to intervene and send health officials to unravel the misery. The latest death comes weeks after Sacred Girls Mukumu School from the same locality was closed after similar deaths were reported.
Mzee alikufa hapa, wakasema ati nyama. Unasikia? Mukumu ilikuwa nyama. Mukumu hao watoto wenye wamekufa huko ilikuwa nyama.
Ulete wahudumu wakuja wakutumia, tujue ni nini mbaya. Hata kusalamia mtu tunaokopa, hata kukula kwa matanga tunaokopa.
Baadaye masaa mawili mtu anakufa. Na wakienda Kakamega ama hospitali ya Mukumu, hawaambii watu wanakonjeka ugonjwa gani. Tunauliza hao ni madaktari kweli? Kwa sababu inatakana waambie watu wanakonjeka ugonjwa fulani.
The case saw the Mukumu High School principal being replaced, with all water reservoirs in the compound being investigated.
We are doing a new borehole for that particular school, Mukumu, and the work of treating that borehole is commencing with immediate effect.
Ruth Huamboi reporting for Prime Edition.
That's a story that we will definitely be following up for you. Legislators George Murugara and Otiende Amolo have been selected to spearhead the bipartisan talks. Murugara, the Tharaka Member of Parliament, will represent the government, while his Radieda counterpart Otiende Amolo represents the Azimio la Umoja coalition.
During the commissioning of the committee on Thursday afternoon, the 14-member team appointed their leaders. The government has settled on Tharaka Member of Parliament George Murugara, while the opposition will be represented by Rarieda Member of Parliament Otiende Amolo.
We wish to assure Kenyans that the committee shall endeavor to resolve all the issues that shall come before us for the benefit of all Kenyans. We are committed and confident that this committee shall find lasting solutions to the concerns raised to it.
However, concerns raised about the membership of legislators Adan Kainan and David Kosing have been left to the party heads. The next sitting will be held on Tuesday, 25th April.
Resolved that its members would do everything to promote and not to undermine or jeopardize the talks. Equally, we urge all the political players to refrain from statements that may be counterproductive.
We learn to live with one another.
This even as the Conference of Catholic Bishops expressed their displeasure in what they termed as a glaring standoff between the bipartisan talks.
a number of political economic issues ailing this country emanate from unresolved historical injustices and mismanagement of public resources, which require adequate time to resolve and find lasting solutions. To resolve these issues, Kenyans require a peaceful environment.
The religious leaders urged the opposing political groupings to uphold peace, even as they cautioned Kenyans against participating in demonstrations. For Prime Edition, I'm Zainab Said.
Azimio la Umoja leader Raila Odinga has accused the Kenya Kwanza administration of blaming their failures to deliver on its campaign pledges on the former regime. Odinga, who was in Morangas, claimed the Kenya Kwanza government was using the former regime as a scapegoat.
Azimio la Umoja leader Raila Odinga was in Murang'a County, accompanied by NARC Kenya leader Martha Karua and other leaders allied to him. During a town hall session in the county, Odinga threw jibes at the Kenya Kwanza administration over what he termed its failure to implement their promises to the Kenyan at the bottom of the pyramid.
Tulisema mambo mengi ambayo tulisema tungefanya, lakini hawa jamaa vile walitoa ahadi. Wakati ile walikuwa naongea mama mboga ati yule hasla. Sasa serikali ya counties hawajalipwa pesa kuanzia Januari, Februari, Machi, sasa Aprili.
Na hata ukienda kwa hospitali yenyewe hakuna madawa kwa sababu hakuna pesa ambazo zinakuja katika county. Lazima tujue hayo mahindi yametoka wapi. Lazima tujue quality ya hiyo mahindi, tujue kama GMO ama si GMO, si ndio?
The Azimio leader maintained that through the Build and Bridges initiative fronted by him and former President Uhuru Kenyatta, most of Kenya's problems could have been solved.
BBI ilisema mambo mengi zaidi tulikuwa tunataka kufanya. Moja yao ilikuwa ni mambo ya one man, one vote, one shilling. Sio?
He called on Mount Kenya dwellers to rally behind him in what he said were efforts to liberate the country.
Kwa mimi nataka kuambia nyinyi tunataka tuungane pamoja. Mko tayari? Mko tayari? Tutembee pamoja.
Wale hawajiwezi wako na shinda kama wewe. Na hiyo ni mambo ya ukweli. Kwa hivyo tusigawanywe kwa misingi ya kikabila, tusigawanywe kwa maeneo, shida ni shida.
This coming as Jubilee Secretary General Jeremiah Kioni has accused a section of politicians of attempting to cripple the party.
By the way, let them be told, now it is the members of the party and them to deal with them. Hamwezi subua watu miaka yote. Kama umeamua kuhama chama, si uende.
So those on that side who have tried to hijack this party, believe me, your CVs are not good with the people, even from where you come from.
Kioni maintains that the party is intact and that the leadership as per the 26th of February 2022 National Delegates Convention stands, following a ruling by the Political Parties Disputes Tribunal.
I want to tell the members of Jubilee, the followers across this country, that the party is fully functional. If you have an issue with any of us, there is a procedure you should follow. If you think you want to remove the SG, get the party leader to convene a NEC. Then a decision will be made that will then be taken to the NDC.
Nancy Okware, Prime Edition.
Now, away from politics, where former First Lady Mama Ngina Kenyatta has called on authorities to recognize and consider vetting people who fought for the country's freedom. Speaking after receiving gifts from Field Marshal Muthoni Kirima at her Muthaiga's home, the former First Lady said liberators have not enjoyed the fruits of independence.
The family and friend of Field Marshal Muthoni Kirima, a former freedom fighter, visited former First Lady Mama Ngina Kenyatta at her Nairobi Muthaiga home. Specifically, Field Marshal Muthoni's family thanked the First Lady Mama Ngina for paying her loan balance amounting to 4.7 million shillings and buying her a home in Nyeri in 2022.
Na mama wetu wa taifa wa kwanza Mama Ngina Kenyatta. Kwa hivyo ndio sababu tumekuja kumleta ili alete shukrani zake. Alikuwa na shida, mama aliingia pale akamlipia hata deni ilikuwa kwa Equity, akamjengea, akamnunulia nyumba ili asiwe na shida.
Si watu wengi wakifanyiwa kitu wanakumbuka kurudisha shukrani, na kwa hivyo mimi nafurahia sana akiwa hapa.
The shaving of Field Marshal Muthoni's hair by Mama Ngina a few years ago, which symbolically marked the end of the era of fighting for freedom, becoming a subject of discussion here.
Na ile time Mama Ngina alikuja, yes, alikubali kunyoa shosho, naye shosho alinyolewa. Na sisi kama familia tulifurahia. Lakini shosho alisema request yake ni moja. Nywele yangu iweko kwa hii bendera ya Kenya.
The former First Lady said liberators of this country have not enjoyed the fruits of independence and called on the authorities to consider fighting them.
Na nyinyi mkiwa watoto shosho wangu, muendelee kuwa na amani ya nchi hii na mjue tulitoa mbali sana. Na kwa hivyo ndio tuko hapa.
The Kirimas gifted Mama Ngina with goats, a pot, a three-legged stool, a traditional tray, a kiondo, which is an African basket, and some traditional food.
Well, Kenya debt ceiling likely to be revised and downwards. That and more coming after the break.
What am I forgetting? Nini. Workers paid. Rent checked. Mlango locked. Visiting notice. Goza mzae silitoa jana long. Internet sorted. What is it? What am I forgetting? What?
Nini? Nimesahau kucheza Loto Moto.
Usisahau kucheza Loto Moto. Unaweza shinda hadi milioni 2 kwenye M-Pesa. Chagua lipa na M-Pesa. Paybill number weka 757070. Account number weka neno Loto. Weka kiwango chochote cha pesa kuanzia shilingi 50 hadi 2000. Lipa kisha subiri draw. Ujumbe huu umeidhinishwa na BCLP.
Today, I want to show them my attitude today. Ya bwana, ni chuo kikuu cha burudani, mashavu.
Sifika bei umechapa, kitambe meja utahata. Nyumbani kaumbea.
Burudani.
Twende tukacheze bango. Mama it takes two to tango.
Na interview kali kutoka Pwani.
Kucheza nawe. Baby nimechizi nawe.
Na ukitaka tuiwashe leo.
Bwana, kila siku ya Friday ama Ijumaa ukipenda saa 3 hadi saa 6 kamili.
Nafanya kama unacheza isoko.
Kumbuka hashtag Masha. Nyumbani kwa burudani. Usikose tegea show kali tokea pande za Pwani.
Anachukua, anaweka wa le général Dangote. Anachukua, anaweka wa le grand Bao. Anachukua, anaweka wa boss ya mbuka. Anachukua, anaweka
Welcome back. The exit of M23 from critical areas it previously occupied poses a fresh headache for the East African Community regional peace. Armed groups with backing from locals have been seeking controls of the airs, leading to a confrontation with the regional force seeking to bring back stability to the east of Congo.
The Luanda agreement settled on M23 vacating from strategic areas they had occupied in the east of Congo before the DRC government can engage them in any meaningful talks. The M23 have retreated to designated areas. The M23 is the most dangerous group in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The rebel group has seized the east of Congo for nearly 2 decades, leading to massive loss of lives, destruction of property, and displacement of thousands. While the East Africa Community regional forces have succeeded in driving back the rebel group to the designated areas as outlined by the Angola Treaty, other armed groups are now seeking to seize control of the areas previously occupied by M23. The armed groups are behind a gun confrontation between the Burundi contingent in Masisi.
These 7 members were brought to the force headquarters and we handed them over to expanded joint verification mechanism. As a force headquarters, we don't interrogate people. We don't hold people into custody here. We don't have a prison. We respect the Constitution, the laws, sovereignty, territorial integrity of DRC.
Hii eneo letu ambayo tunadhibiti wako maarmed group wengi. Na zumuni za maarmed group majambazi wengine ni kusumbua raia. Sasa wa raia kila siku tunawaomba wao wanatuambia.
Though the incident went without fatalities,
Burundi bakaenda kule kwenye bako bakabagombanisha ba Burundi, bakabapika masasi, bakanambana nao bakapigana nabo na ba Burundi bakabapikanisha.
So vicious are the ethnic militia, the DRC army can't venture into the territory to disrupt an extortion ring they have formed, where transporters of goods must pay a fee to be allowed past. Hundreds of citizens remain displaced and in fear of attacks by armed ethnic groups.
Tulifukuzwa na Nyatura, FDLR na Nyamai.
Shida tunachopitia hapa ni kuhusu magonjwa tu. Magonjwa ya walaia hapa wanagonjwa lakini hakuna hospitali hapa. Hakuna nini, sisi ndo tunawasaidia kuwapatia matibabu mbalimbali.
With a month-long ceasefire between the DRC government and M23 rebels, ICRAF awaits the conclusion of a political process being managed through the Angola Treaty and the Inter-Congolese Forum being spearheaded by retired President Uhuru Kenyatta.
Vijana, wazee, kuhakikisha kwamba pia mnadumisha usalama. Ama namna gani? Hilo ni jambo muhimu zaidi.
John Jacob Kuria, Prime Edition.
Making coffins was not the initial idea of Paul Irungu. A need arose in his village when an elderly man died and there was nowhere to buy a coffin to bury the deceased. This prompted Irungu to use some carpentry tools that he had acquired while training in a local workshop to try and make a coffin. To his surprise, the 50-year-old man says despite being an attempt, everybody was pleased with the work and praised him for making a quality coffin. This marked the beginning of his 25-year career, which has gradually expanded to be a big business that earns him a fortune.
When we met Irungu at his workshop located at Mungare streets of Narok town, he seemed happy and content, though one could sense some form of loneliness. He tells us that he was born in Kiambu town, where he began his career back in the year 1996. At his village, he made about 300 coffins before he thought of moving to Thika town to expand his business. However, things did not go well for him while in Thika, a few meters from his business premises. Numerous accidents occurred in a span of few months, which created a notion that his coffin business was behind the deaths.
The threat forced Irungu to relocate to Narok town in the year 2005 to seek greener pastures, as his home background seemed not interested in his business. Though he struggled to begin from scratch in Narok town, Irungu says he did not give up because his business gave him a livelihood.
Tulipofika mahali pale na Vika, ikawa sasa mahali tuliweka ile kasi, ikawa nao magari kaanza kuanguka hapo. Sijui kama ilikuwa inaanguka hapo bereni, lakini ilipo anguka tu ikasemekana yule mtu amefungua hapa majenesa, ndio sasa anaomba, sasa ndio hii vitu inapatikana. Sasa tukawa sasa ilipigwa mpaka masaduku tukaitengenezea hapa.
When asked about his social life,
mimi ni mzee mmoja wa kanisa. Unajipata nilipoanza kutengeneza hiyo masaduku, unajipata hata kanisani umeanza kutengwa. Unaulizwa kwa nini mzee wa kanisa ulijiunga na hii kasi. Hata mabishop na watu wengine wanakuja kukuangalia ili tu wajue bona huyu Mkristo mwenzetu, huyu mzee wa kanisa, bona afanye hii kasi.
He is happy because his firstborn son, who just completed high school, waiting to be admitted to the university, loves working in the workshop.
Katika methali za kikwetu tukisema umbwa kuzaa mbwa ingine. Kwa hivyo unajipata yule kijana hata nikimzaa hachukuli saduku, ni jambo la ambaye si mzuri, anakuja inabidi tuendelee na yeye.
When asked about his memorable moments,
yule mzee hakuwa anakuja kwa masaduku kwa jambo la kawaida tu. Alikuja na akaniambia, fundi, fanya hivi, tengeneza masaduku mawili na moja itapata mwenyewe. Alikaa kama just a day, siku 3 ama 4 akafa. Sasa ikawa sasa ilibidi wale wapendwa wake wakaja wakaniuliza, yule mzee ambaye alikuwa amechagua saduku hapa, tunasikia mlikuwa mnaongea kuhusu saduku, ilikuwa gani na gani? Nikamuhusia.
Irungu reveals that there are seasons when his business is booming and why.
Sasa vile kaunti ya Narok imekaa, kuna sehemu zingine za baridi. Kwa hivyo unajipata wale wazee wako huko sehemu ziko baridi, baridi ikiingia tu huwa wanakufa sana.
Through his savings, Irungu says he has educated his children, opened a business for his wife, and bought a house. Joan Junge for Prime Edition.
Interesting story. There are seasons when business is booming for him. Now, the Senate has passed the Division of Revenue Bill 2023 from the National Assembly without amendments, paving way for the disbursement of funds to counties for the financial year 2023-2024. The approval will now see Treasury disburse 385 billion shillings, an increase of 15 billion shillings from the 370 billion shillings that was disbursed last year. 25 senators, mainly from the ruling coalition, voted in favor of the bill, as Azimio senators who were pushing for the 407 billion shillings allocation walked out.
The Division of Revenue Bill 2023 is now headed for presidential assent after the Senate approved the bill from the National Assembly without amendments. During the afternoon sitting, 25 senators, mainly from Kenya Kwanza coalition, voted in favor of the bill as their Azimio counterparts kept off. Azimio-affiliated senators were pushing for the allocation of 407 billion shillings, as had been proposed by the Commission for Revenue Allocation, but were outnumbered. Meanwhile, the National Assembly says MPs will come up with a law that will introduce harsher penalties to perpetrators of sexual harassment and sexual violence as a deterrent to the incessant cases of sexual violence in the country. The MPs say the move will help curb cases of exploitation at workplaces, as well as curb teenage pregnancies among school-going children.
I think we need to enhance the sentences to life for people like that. And please, if you're here and you want to, you want to stand here and give us your moral high ground, we all don't know what to do in your private lives. Honestly, why would you do something like that? We are so morally bereft. You think you are better than the person that you are sharing. The fact that you can share that before people, even if I take the photo and it is mine, Right now, if I have sex with my husband, I take a photo. There is nothing wrong. There is no law against it. The problem is you who is sharing my photo.
We must be there to speak on their behalf and protect them. Because if we do not protect those in tier states today, Honorable Speaker, tomorrow it shall be those in our families, and even us here. You have seen, as Honorable Millie has said, even women leaders are being harassed.
We have to take the lead in protecting the women of this nation, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I am aware that a lot of these women are unable to come out, Madam Speaker. They're unable to speak about it because of the stigma around the issue, Madam Speaker. People tell you, let us be harsh about it. Do not come forward because then people will judge you about it. But it has happened to many women, Madam Speaker. It is happening sometimes even to women in churches who are serving. Men of the cloth, Madam Speaker. We have a nation that has decided that women are to be taken advantage of. And for eons, Madam Speaker, women have suffered, Madam Speaker. I think the biggest sin that women seem to commit is hunger for anything.
The House at the same time adopted a report by the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee that recommended approval for appointment of David Oginde to the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission chairman position. For Prime Edition, I'm Gladys Mungai.
Thank you, Gladys, for that report. The Law Society of Kenya, in partnership with the Kenya Human Rights Commission, are urging the relevant authorities to expedite investigations into the Karibe gold mine tragedy that claimed the lives of 3 employees and left 6 others injured. A deadly blast occurred at the gold mine on 23rd of January this year, leading to the deaths. Meanwhile, the 2 commissions have received parents of victims of suspected police brutality. They want justice for affected families.
And the victims and the families have today presented a petition to the Director of Public Prosecutions, and we make this statement jointly as the civil society organizations that have been asking for justice to be done to these families. The Law Society also today has received the mothers of the victims of suspects of enforced disappearance and suspected police brutality. They have brought us documents to support a claim that we are exploring to take action and file a constitutional petition for compensation.
Aviator instant game. Be a daring pilot and earn by how much high you can lift the plane. The higher you fly, the higher your win. The sky is the limit. Mozart bet.
Get us some water.
What do I do? What do I do? Maybe if we look at each file individually, tutajua ni gani na miss.
Leta your key.
Did you forget that I'm a content creator? That was a prank. Have you been locked outside? I have the keys.
I told you not to call me unless nifungue unanipea.
George. Where is he? Security. No need for that. Anything for you. You took her without my permission, Nick.
Kwa mimi ndio nitamlea until she comes of age.
I'm here for you, Daddy.
So
time I encountered rape, I was 6 years towards 7 years through my father.
And he stabbed you?
Yeah, he stabbed me on my knee, extended that knife all the way up here. And he told me, what I've done, I will do it on your neck. Wakamulikiana wakavaa. Then of course kuna mwingine alikuwa na panga akaiguzisha kwa ukuta, then akakuja akaifanyia mic testing kwa shingo yangu. So they literally descended on me one after another.
Welcome back. It's now time for business. Kenya's debt ceiling is likely to be revised down from the current 10 trillion shillings to 8.2 trillion shillings if the government implements views from today's public participation forum. Members of the public want the debt ceiling to be 55% of the gross domestic product as opposed to the specific amount. As Trevor Ngendo reports, as a percentage, Kenya's debt is currently 61% of GDP.
Opinion has been divided as to whether Kenya's public debt, which was at 9.2 trillion shillings according to Central Bank of Kenya figures, is sustainable. Supporters say there are countries whose debt status is more worse than Kenya's and that the country needs to borrow to develop the economy. Critics have argued that Kenya is currently struggling to repay its debt, and accumulating more debt might affect service delivery. Debt servicing is estimated at 1.1 trillion shillings in the current financial year, which is a third of the budget. This has prompted the National Treasury to seek your opinion on clauses you want to be amended in the Public Finance Management Act of 2012 that, among others, covers public debt. Submissions offered during a forum in Nairobi on Thursday leaned towards a reduction of the public debt ceiling from the current 10 trillion shillings to 8.24 trillion shillings by limiting public debt to 55% of GDP to reduce the risk of default.
I believe from 60 to 55, maybe it will still do very well. And regarding the gap between the national government and the county government, I believe the reasons why we elected the governors is for them to be accountable for each and everything that happens with the finances.
Public participation is where we make decisions with the public, and then it is done.
The current public debt of 9.2 trillion shillings would translate to 61% of GDP. And participants at the public forum feel that the country should live within its means by reducing the debt ceilings.
Due to debt management, today we talked of they are keeping it at around 60%, which is on the highest. So as a country, I can say we are not doing well. We need to reduce it to that 55%. And even my personal view, if it can be made less than 55, it can go up to 50, then we can achieve financial independence.
By taking part in the process of public participation, Kenyans can ensure their voices are heard and their interests taken into account as a crucial step towards achieving sustainable and robust economic growth for the country. Trevor Ngendo reporting for KBC Channel 1, Nairobi.
Kenya and the United States are hopeful that a deal will be reached in their trade negotiations before this December. Investment, Trade and Industry Cabinet Secretary Moses Kuria says the trade negotiators have made progress on 8 of the 13 issues under discussion. Kuria says the negotiators would continue with the discussions virtually, then gather for a face-to-face negotiation session this June.
We hope to get into the third round in the month of June, and I would want to report that we are making considerable progress on most of the topics, specifically 4 areas of agriculture, MSMEs, the regulations of business environment, and the fourth one is digital trade, where we have received what we call the text of negotiation from the U.S. team. But overall, on 8 of the 13 areas, we are making very, very good progress. It is very important that we make steps that are going to signal to U.S. investors about the Kenyan investment climate. And as you saw earlier this month, during the AmCham, or late last month, when we had the AmCham conference, American companies are voting with their feet. You saw us actually sign a $500 million investment project by Moderna to set up a vaccine factory in Tatu City. We have got lots and lots more of these deals in the pipeline. I am going to be joining my colleague Alfred Mutua in New York and Washington, D.C. next week to have a round table or several round tables with U.S. investors. And it is important because of those investors that we conclude this agreement so that we can be able to signal Kenya as a place that is ready for investment.
Former head of public service Joseph Kinyua says the government's acquisition of the stake held in Telkom Kenya by Helios was above board. He told legislators that nationalization of Telkom Kenya was necessitated by security concerns since the telco hosts servers for key government agencies.
Former head of public service Joseph Kinyua says the move by the government to pay Helios 6.2 billion shillings for its 60% stake in Telecom Kenya was on security concerns. Kinyua says after the 2007 privatization of Telecom Kenya, security agencies advised the government that key data belonging to security agencies and the government were at risk of being compromised since the telco hosted servers for all government agencies.
When Helios was leaving is now when the government noticed that Telkom operates national security, is in charge of national security assets and services.
When it came to 207, I would argue those that were involved, maybe that issue of security never came in. It is later when it was felt, particularly with the reference by the security organs, there is need to be sensitive and to take action that can help.
To protect government data against such concerns, he says a buyback clause in the Helios Orange sale agreement was invoked to ensure the government is prioritized if the teleco shares were on sale.
Now, Orange East Africa and when Jamhuri Holdings were shareholders, you are saying that security was not an issue. But you realized when Jamhuri was exiting that this one was an issue.
And this is what informed the need for amending the shareholders agreement to provide a provision that can enable the government to have a veto so that in case they were to make a decision which might be bordering on what may be seen in the interest of the Kenya government, and also not just security, even in terms of the asset.
Now that Telkom is on a deathbed, what about the security? Are we safe?
Even at the time when the decision was being made, the Security Council had looked, even our security people, they had gone to think in terms of why don't we set up one owned by the security fellows where you can remove the commercial element. But it was felt strategic that perhaps we don't need to go into that direction.
Kinyua suggested that the teleco be compensated 15 billion shillings for land acquired for construction of a sports complex.
It was felt this land is a land that can be used for the purpose for which. What I would argue is, yes, it's good still to compensate them so that in their balance sheet, because it's showing as an asset, They don't just appear like an asset that disappeared. And that is an arrangement that can be done between the government because it's a government body.
Vincent Ruba reporting for Prime Edition.
Kenya and Uganda have sealed a deal to combat cross-border movement of contra goods. Officials from the two countries believe collaboration on research, legal and enforcement measures, communication and technology are key in tracking and tracing counterfeit products that cost the two countries billions of shillings in lost tax revenue.
It have been a thorny issue for governments, manufacturers and consumers. The most counterfeited products are fast-moving consumable goods, including food products, alcoholic beverages, cosmetics, electrical and electronic equipment. To address the issue of counterfeiting, the Anti-Counterfeit Authority and Uganda's Anti-Counterfeit Network have signed a deal to collaborate in combating the cross-border flow of counterfeit goods as part of wider efforts to protect manufacturers, investors and consumers.
So through this type of collaboration, and we also reach out to a counterpart in Tanzania, we'll be able also to have a bigger voice. So once we assemble in Arusha and ensure that what happens in Kenya eventually is going to affect what is happening in Uganda and Tanzania, vice versa. But if you have a uniform way of dealing with the menace, it will be easier to curb it.
Counterfeiting is cross-border organized crime. Yeah. So if you do whatever you're doing here in Kenya, we do whatever we're doing in Uganda, and we're not collaborating, you're wasting your time. Actually, very soon we could have a common market of counterfeits if we are not careful.
The Memorandum of Understanding will pave way for both agencies to conduct research, enforce legal measures, and use of technology to track and trace counterfeits.
We need an advert that not only promotes a sale of a product, but an advert that will also give you information as a consumer about the product. What are the genuine specifications? What is the packaging supposed to look like? What are the ingredients? Where do I even buy the product?
The Anti-Counterfeit Authority is implementing the first phase of intellectual property rights, recordation regulations, targeting electrical and electronics, footwear and apparel, with the second phase expected to kick off next month.
Last phase in January, we targeted electricals and electronics because they are highly counterfeited as goods. The other one is footwear and apparels. They are also highly counterfeited goods that now are coming in the next phase. That is in the May, from May. We'll be targeting that, as well as alcoholic beverages.
The process involves the creation of a database of intellectual property rights, information relating to trademarks, copyrights, trade names, or any other protected intellectual property rights for all goods being imported into Kenya. The Anti-Counterfeit Authority says the requirement by traders to submit pre-import permit applications for processing and approvals before importing will come into force next month.
Those goods that are going to be affected, they are the ones which are going to be imported after 1st of May.
Weri Mujenga for Prime Edition.
Either you're left or right.
Small businesses have been advised to consider insuring their businesses against risks such as fire and theft. The Insurance Regulatory Authority Chair Mwambu Mabonga says the macroeconomics environment continues to be volatile and insurance firms should develop special insurance packages for small businesses that include intellectual property.
At least 450,000 micro, small and medium-sized enterprises close shop annually in Kenya, translating to at least 1,000 daily, according to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. This is without consideration of other risks such as theft, where looters mostly target small businesses. Despite such businesses accounting for 9 out of 10 businesses, their uptake of insurance remains extremely low. The Insurance Regulatory Authority says low insurance penetration in Kenya stems from low awareness levels about insurance by small businesses and the fear of high premium costs.
We shall not be a stumbling block to you to do business. And those small, they call them small foxes that have delayed the rollout of some of these key products to the market, we shall endeavor with the management to ensure that we give you a good environment to do your business.
Mobonga says insurance firms should create all-inclusive special packages for such businesses.
As an authority, we've been looking forward to innovative products in the market that would respond to the needs of the people. The authority did provide regulations and guidelines for registration of micro-insurance companies that would basically focus on the needs of small businessmen. And this would also encourage inclusion and access.
Is the product that is going actually to secure many micro business outside there on the market.
Micro, small and medium-sized enterprises are being encouraged to embrace insurance as opposed to the habit of only seeking insurance services after disaster strikes.
Explore ways to leverage technology to improve access to insurance and risk management solutions for SMEs. These could include exploring new distribution channels that enable SMEs to access insurance services easily.
Insurance firms are seeking the input of micro, small and medium-sized enterprises on their needs in a product to custom make and innovate as appropriate. They're confident that if small businesses begin insuring their operations, the number of small businesses dying before celebrating the 3-year mark will significantly reduce.
The ability to address regional and sectoral imbalances in the economy necessitates us to respond accordingly in support of a sector that keeps the hopes of many lives and families in Kenya alive.
Hibak Said for Prime Edition.
Ni kubwa, ni mingi, ni tamu, ni yako na ni moto.
Tumengojea sana show ya Kikenya ambayo inatuelewa na inatujali na pia inajumuika nasi katika magumu ya maisha. Guess what? We have it. The Loto Show! Uko na uwezo wa kujishindia hadi 2 million Kenyan shillings kupitia draw yetu popote unapotutazama. Na tuko na haja ya kusikia story na magumu unayoyapitia. Tutakuita kwenye show na tutarahisisha mahali. Nafasi za wageni watatu zipo katika kila show ambao wanajipatia fursa ya kujichagulia sanduku moja kati ya 12. Kila sanduku liko na zawadi kem na za kipekee. With lots of fun, lots of prizes and money. Lotto Moto, only on KBC.
Ili kupata sikiza tuni hii ya usini record, bonyeza *811 *396#.
Unakata pia kabaya Wakenya mnakuanga nako ya kuweka mtu kwa speaker alafu mnarekodi sauti yake bila ruhusa. Nikipata sauti yangu ina trend huko nje na kuna pesa napata, mtajua mimi mlu yako na roya na sina roya binadamu. Usini record.
Ili kupata sikiza tuni hii usini record, bonyeza *811 *396#.
Hey, what's up, people? My name is DJ Tabs, the head girl, your #1 female gospel DJ. You can catch me every Saturday from 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. as I bring you the best of the best in gospel music. The show is The Backyard Live. Unapenda local, nitakuchezea. Unapenda African, nitakuchezea. Unapenda reggae, buo, mimi ndio plug wako.
Bila jasho,
catch me, remember, with Jay Fontana every Saturday at 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. Tutakuwa na even your favorite gospel artist. Kumbuka kuokoka, sio kuboeka. Hashtag The Backyard Live.
Everything itafikia your lovely wife na kila mtu kwa familia yako. Choose wisely.
Chukua hii pesa urudi kwenyu. Why don't you channel this energy that you have in your own relationship? It just might work.
Si unaongelesha tu Jane. I'll be a good husband.
Huo mstari ndio jemedari alitumia. Yeye na hayo magonjwa yake aende katafute bwana mwingine na huko. I am not going to share my husband with her. No.
Yes.
Ni historia yetu yote na memories umemtupa nje kama uchafu.
I think I should leave.
Mali ni zake na decision ni yake. Ngoja inheritance yako yote ichukuliwe ukijifanya hamnazo.
Tina.
What do you want? Bobby.
We're grateful that you are still here with us, and we continue with business, where adoption of smart AI chatbots such as ChatGPT, blockchain and open source data are among the top 5 technology trends the insurance industry is leveraging to drive business. According to Continental Reinsurance Group Managing Director Lawrence Nazare, technology will increase efficiency and also reduce fraud and consequently drive up insurance uptake.
Data from the Insurance Regulatory Authority indicates that as of the end of 2020, insurance penetration stood at 2.17% against a global 7.4% average. However, new trends have been impacting the insurance marketplace, creating competition and improving customer experience. The latest survey by Pan-African reinsurer Continental Re indicates that insurance industry leaders are increasing investment in tech solutions, including the adoption of smart AI chatbots such as ChatGPT, blockchain and open source data to enhance efficiency. Continental Reinsurance Group Managing Director Lawrence Nazare says adoption of technology will go a long way in addressing challenges facing the industry, including delivering a personalized policyholder experience, rising costs of operations, business intelligence, stiff competition and outdated technology infrastructure. It is estimated that a third of CEOs from Africa's leading insurers who took part in the survey plan to invest between 3 to 5% of their revenue in anything from smart AI chatbots to robotics and clean tech, an investment pegged at over $1 billion. Nazare says the insurance industry, like most other industries, is currently undergoing rapid changes that can lead to greater customer centricity and agility, but the inherent power of both technology and insurance to transform anything from business models, communities to whole countries and regions of the world remains valid even today when we are faced with constant disruption. The Retirement Benefits Authority is banking on the Hustler Fund savings scheme to grow the pension industry's assets to 2.4 trillion shillings by next year. Retirement Benefits Authority Chief Manager Ann Mugo believes the informal sector holds the key to grow the pension industry. Here is Yune Karisa with the details.
The informal sector, which contributes 18% to the GDP, is responsible for creating about 90% of jobs in Kenya. The Retirement Benefit Authority believes the Hustler Fund could drive up the pensions industry. This is because those applying for Hustler Fund loans are required to deposit 5% of their loan proceeds in a short-terming saving account. Currently, for every 2 shillings saved from the Hustler Fund loan, the government tops up a shilling. However, the Retirement Benefits Authority wants the government to double this so that for every shilling from a Hustler Fund borrower deposited into the savings scheme, the government matches it.
We are aware that the pension aspect is 70% of the savings. Those funds have grown. They are approaching 1 billion shillings. Currently, the available investment is in government securities, but as we go on, it will be opened up to other investment areas.
The pensions industry has been facing the challenge of delayed disbursements of members' deductions, especially by government agencies.
We know that their revenues have gone down over time, but we want them to prioritize remittance of contributions to pension schemes. So what we are doing, we are engaging with the government, again at National Treasury, it is our parent ministry, to see whether at policy level we can require that funds are given priority and prioritized and directed to the pension schemes before they are used for other operations.
The chief manager is underscoring the need of Trust Fund Board to align to market trends.
Our administrators are also urging trustees to be careful about where they are investing, not just in terms of returns, but how those companies that they're investing in are actually carrying out their business.
While it is important to make returns for members, we also want to protect the future of our world. That's why we want pension funds to start thinking about, can just a return be the only issue, or environmental issues, governance issues are also important.
They were speaking during a 2-day workshop to enlighten fund managers and trustees on emerging investment trends. Juni Karisa Mbele from Mombasa County.
What am I forgetting? Nini. Workers paid. Rent checked. Mlango locked. Visiting out gas. Goza mzae silitoa jana la internet sorted. What is it? What am I forgetting? What?
Nini? Nimesahau kucheza Loto Moto.
Usisahau kucheza Loto Moto. Unaweza shinda hadi milioni 2 kwenye M-Pesa. Chagua lipa na M-Pesa. Paybill number weka 7577. Account number weka neno Loto. Weka kiwango chochote cha pesa kuanzia shilingi 50 hadi 2000. Lipa kisha subiri draw. Ujumbe huu umeidhinishwa na BCLP.
I want to show them my attitude.
Ya bana, ni chuo kikuu cha burudani, mashavu.
Sifika bei umechapa. Kitambo imejaa utahata.
Nyumbani kaumbea.
Burudani.
Twende tukacheze bango. Mama it takes two to tango.
Na interview kali kutoka Pwani.
Nakucheza nawe. Baby nimechizi nawe. Na ukitaka tuiwashe leo.
Bwana, kila siku ya Friday ama Ijumaa ukipenda saa 3 hadi saa 6 kamili.
Lafanya kama unacheza isoko.
Kumbuka hashtag Masha. Nyumbani kwa burudani. Usikose tegea show kali tokea pande za Pwani.
Anachukua, anaweka, wa le général Dangote. Anachukua, anaweka, wa le grand Mba. Anachukua, anaweka, wa boss ya mboka. Anachukua, anaweka, wa.
Welcome back. Widening the tax base by taxing wealth as opposed to income, as well as increasingly targeting those in the informal sector, are some of the options the government could explore to increase revenue collections to fund this year's proposed 3.63 trillion shillings budget. Ernst & Young tax partner Hadija Nyamai wants this year's budget to continue focusing on enhancing food security by expanding the acreage under irrigation, as well as subsidizing farm inputs, provision of the Hustlers Fund loans to small businesses, as well as capital projects to grow the economy. Nyamai spoke to our reporter Regina Manyara about her expectations about this year's budget, and this is how the conversation went.
This is Prime Edition, and I am Regina Manyara. Government intends to spend 3.63 trillion shillings in the next financial year 2023-2024. Question is, how will government finance this, and where will it be spending this particular monies? We speak to the experts tonight, and today we are joined by none other than Hadija Nyamai, who is a partner at Ernst & Young, to take us through this particular conversation. Thank you very much for making time. Thank you. Let's start off with the issue of 3.6 trillion shillings. That's what the government intends to spend in this particular financial year. What are the likely sources, or how is government to finance this particular budget?
Last year, we were looking at 3.3 trillion. So there is definitely an increment. And as we speak, the KRA, which is the main financer of the budget, is struggling to hit its target. So we can only have one more source of revenue to beef up or to let the government hit the target. And this extra source of revenue would ordinarily be borrowing. It could be local, domestic, it could be external borrowing. Now the question and the issue, or the elephant in the room around Kenya, is that we already way above our borrowing ceiling. Kenya is over 65% of its GDP in borrowing. And if you look at internationally, we are no longer in the green, just like other countries. We are in amber, almost getting to red. So the question is this a feasible source of revenue that will beef up or supplement the KRA collections, which probably this year would already be in a deficit?
What are the tax measures that that are likely to be put in place to help the Kenya Revenue Authority rake in this particular very much needed revenue?
When you look at KRA, they've been putting in place a lot of domestic revenue mobilization strategies, and in the past years they have effected a few of them. When we went into the COVID season, the pandemic, that whole year, 2 years, they instituted a voluntary tax disclosure program. This really helped in collecting some revenue, and it accounts for some of the wins they've been getting and hitting their target and surpassing it. We had a digital tax, where they are taxing a digital services tax of 1.5% on foreign nationals, as well as VAT. We saw a lot of uptake, voluntary disclosures by foreigners, and this also supported. Now the issue is, at least for the two of those that I've mentioned, these were more or less short-term measures. For instance, if I look at the voluntary tax disclosure program, it is going to take 3 years. So whereas they were getting all that money in, at some point it has stopped coming in, and that could explain why there's a deficit currently. Because when you look at tax, you levy a VAT, it will have an impact on income tax. Depending on what it has, it will have an impact on pay as you earn. It's just a spillover effect of all taxes. So when one was putting through an amendment or a proposal to tax exported services, probably this hadn't been fully looked into or analyzed. Now, probably this will be eliminated or repealed in the coming tax proposals. And my hope is that this will increase revenue from other revenue sources as opposed to VAT. So when you add up all that for government, and now the new era of green taxes, probably in the coming year, short term, medium, up to long term, the target will be hit. But for as far as the 3.3 for last year and the 3.6 and KRA's or tax collection contributions to the national budget are, we may be having a challenge.
On some of also, the tax amendment proposals is, to integrate, the telecommunications, with the Kenya Revenue Authority to rake in, to even monitor, how much you're getting on your mobile platform and such. Do you think that this is going to rake in more revenue for the Kenya Revenue Authority?
I think it would, but there are a few things to consider. One is the legal aspect.
Yes.
How they will hack this from a legal perspective. Two is that when you look at Kenya and the majority of the East African countries, they are a cash economy, but they've also embraced a lot of mobile banking and mobile transactions. So it would be a good idea to loop in those that are, for instance, they have a house, they are getting residential rent from it, and they are being paid through M-Pesa. They are being paid through Airtel money. So if there is a link between the telcos, then the Kenya Revenue Authority would be able to trace this. The question here is, do they have the technology to map and analyze all this? We are looking at over 50 million people. We are looking at over probably thousands and millions and billions of transactions. So does KRA or the government of Kenya have the capability to analyze, to pull this data, to be able to use it to the extent that they need to use it to get taxes? So if we are again putting it into the buckets of short-term, long-term, and medium-term measures, this to me would be a long-term measure. They start now, start mapping, look for the technology that will be able to help them assess and pick this. And maybe in the longer term, this could be something that is workable. But I don't see it yielding much in the short term.
What has been the prerequisites? What has hampered, us from having a national tax policy?
The work of a national tax policy is to look into measures, procedures, structures on how revenue is collected. You do not set a tax this year and then next year you're cancelling it, you're amending it. The issue of VAT on export of services, it's in, out, zero rating, it goes to exempt, now it's taxable, it could easily go back to exempt or zero rated. If we had a proper tax policy that says within 3 years taxes should remain stable, that would work. But what is hampering are the conflicting interests. And the two being so intertwined, when you go to Treasury, you'll find that they are working so much and in tandem with the KRA officials, which is a good thing, but objectivity is key here to see that we achieve what needs to be achieved. I think for me that is the biggest issue. And also the mentality, especially by African governments, that when you put something that is positive, in this case a regime that is incentivizing investors, bluntly one would say that is a loss in revenue. And yet ideally it shouldn't be a loss. It is a loss, say, in VAT, but it will be a gain in pay as you earn, it will be a gain in corporate tax, it will be a gain in withholding tax, and it will be a gain when many investors come in and export. This is an export-led growth economy. So you see there's so many conflicting issues that need to be balanced and looked into.
What are the low-hanging fruits for the Kenya Revenue Authority going forward in terms of raking in revenue amid the talk of widening the tax bracket?
So if I look at bringing in revenue, of course, the tax on derivatives, it will be a tax, but the question is how many people are trading in it. So it will be a tax, probably not that impactful. Capital gains tax, it will be impactful because many people are dealing in sale of property and sale of assets. The question is, what impact will it have on other taxes? What impact will it have on investor confidence and people coming in to invest? So those will bring in revenue, and yes, they are effective 1st January 2023, so that revenue is already expected to be in. But also things like which are more structural, like e-teams, which they're introducing, that would also help bring in people who have not been paying tax. I still think withholding VAT, if really managed well, would also help, because whoever pays you is the person you withhold from, meaning even if they are not registered, at least that 2% is coming in. So I'm thinking those are low-hanging fruits. But on the other side of incentives, where the low-hanging fruits or the revenues will come in the medium to long term, we have so many incentives that government can institute. I think yesterday there was a forum on special economic zones where they're really trying to rally investors to come in. So if that Special Economic Zones Act is fully implemented and the proposals are implemented, it could bring in a lot of investors and they could pay tax that could benefit government.
Now, supposing the Kenya Revenue Authority actually meets its targets, it's carrying the weight of this particular budget, leaving a deficit of around, more than 700 billion shillings. How is government going to bridge this deficit?
I think government only has one option, and that is borrowing. So government, to me, and the issue with borrowing is good. We all borrow. But one needs to be very careful not to borrow money which is payable in the short term to undertake long-term projects. So if government can get that mix and balance and also negotiates better terms, it could be a good thing. But you'll find that in the past we've been borrowing more or less medium to short-term loans that are targeted for long-term projects like, the roads, infrastructure, dams, and all that.
What would be the impact, of, borrowing locally, especially when the private sector has been saying that they're having it hard, access credit?
The ripple effect will take us back to actually less revenue, because if I'm an investor, I'm a manufacturer doing some business, I need a loan, and I'm competing with government, definitely I won't get it, and it means that even my business won't grow. So the ripple effect will take us back to, it will just be a vicious cycle. Government will get the money to spend, yes, but again, KRA may fail to hit its target. So you'll find there is no balance, and at the end of the day, the whole target may not be achieved. So from where we sit, one would also look at it in a way that can government also cut on its expenditure?
Now, government also intends to issue a sovereign bond in the next financial year, 2023-2024. What do you think would be the incentives here, especially to our international would-be lenders?
The competitive advantages are many. For instance, Kenya has already put up the Nairobi International Financial Center. That alone would give investors confidence that the future is bright. Kenya is party to COP, the Conference of the Parties, which is looking to climate change. That is the big deal across the whole economy. The climate is good. They're working towards a better future. So all the cards are in Kenya's favor. We haven't yet hit the red. Yes, we are in amber. So I think it won't be such a big issue around them not getting it. Again, going back to issues of contract negotiations and terms of negotiations, that is where the catch will be. And also knowing that you're competing against other economies that are in the green, that are better off and are better planned. So what government needs to do in this case, it needs to balance its priorities.
Now, and you intend to issue another Eurobond, the sovereign bond, so to speak. From a technocrat point of view, is this wise? Is this the right time to actually do that?
I would say it's not the right time, but if it's happening anyway, we need to go back to a local currency economy where we are using less of the dollars, where imports are monitored and they are not more. And that is why we are talking about incentivizing investors so that we have more exports. We need to focus more on exports so that the foreign currency comes in and the dollar gets to a better level of trading. So for me, I think it's a matter of balancing. It's not ideal, but we need to have policies and efforts towards ensuring that we have export-led growth, towards ensuring, if it means putting in laws and regulations that ensure that everything is not dollarized, if I could use that term. Because when you look at people renting now, I'm staying in Kenya, why should I pay rent in dollars? Why should I go to a shop and I'm told I need to pay in dollars? All that is exacerbating the issue and exacerbating the issue around the dollar being the Kenya shilling weakening and weakening further against the dollar and other currencies.
If you were the one on the seat calling the shots in regard, to Kenya's issue on debt servicing vis-a-vis development, how would you go about it?
I think I would tackle two things. To me, and maybe I could be talking as an ordinary person, I'm mwananchi, but I feel like there are small levers that can be tapped within KRA that can yield better results, very simply. If we take that, if we go back to two examples of digital services tax, within 6 months, the then Commissioner General was seated telling press how it has worked so much and how it has raked in dollars. Voluntary tax disclosure, those are very short-term projects that were taken on and they yielded. So I'm sure we can come up with many more short-term projects, work on the hygiene factors of customer care, factors of taxpayer education, and for me, I think that can make a big difference. The other issue is trying to see how we cost cut. It may not be easy because some of cost cutting may get into the political arena. Some of these are political issues which may not be easy to achieve, but that could also help. Then one would, at the third stage, then look into borrowing and see how feasible that would be. But as it is now, if we don't work on KRA, which brings in the money that finances the loans, then it may be a problem.
What do you think are going to be, the priority spending areas in this particular budget?
From the budget framework paper, we saw that education was leading the pack. Then we had education. Then we had energy, infrastructure, and ICT, 18.7. Public administration, 13.7% of the budget. Now, I have no problem with that, and it's justifiable. The question again is, I think we need to go back to the drawing board and always think about bucket all these measures into short-term, medium, and long-term. Let's take an example of education. Right now, we are struggling with a weakening dollar. We have a debt crisis. We are having deficits with KRA. If we put all that budget into education, when is it going to yield? This is a long-term project. So if we are trying to push and ensure that we are going to have some quick wins, do away with a few of the bottlenecks, then investing so much in a long-term project at such a time may not be a good idea. The time we were fighting the COVID pandemic, it made sense to have health as a priority because that was urgent and it needed to be done. It was a short-term issue. Now I see health has been pushed at the back burner, which also makes sense. Now coming to energy, infrastructure, ICT, it makes sense. We are trying to drive energy project. We are trying to see that we get ahead in infrastructure and ICT. But looking at infrastructure, everything has gone into infrastructure, and these are also long-term projects. So from where I see it, I would imagine that if we want some quick wins, we need to find those years where we say agriculture is key for us. Tourism, what do we need with tourism? It's a cash cow. Kenya is already self-selling.
So in a nutshell, Hadija, what areas, what sectors would you prioritize in as far as spending is concerned if you are the one calling the shots?
I would prioritize tourism. I would prioritize agriculture, and that goes along with manufacturing. I would still look at ICT, infrastructure, energy, but education would come midway for me. Health, currently would also become midway.
Very well said. Now, we have been seeing a series of changes in key institutions of government. I'm talking about we're planning for a transit within CBK. We're also looking at, changes within KRA. We're also seeing changes within the Kenya Ports Authority. First of all, let us look at investor confidence. These changes, what impact have they had on investor confidence?
So the moment we see that there's change somewhere, we expect a raft of many other changes. Positive, negative, but again the impact will be there in terms of a learning curve, in terms of things going back to normal. Let's take an example of KRA. I think between the time we're in the COVID pandemic, from 2020, 2021, 2022, we've only seen changes at top management. A lot of changes. And when I talk about changes, I'm trying to map between myself, I have an audit, I'm being audited, I actually need to pay the government 1 billion Kenya shillings, I have gone to court. An appeal process and a conclusion of an audit properly could take 4 years. So change, and especially in institutions where it is happening so often, like for one reason or another, and I'm sure there's good reason for the Revenue Authority to always have the change it has had, it also comes with the effects which are negatively impacted.
Now, what recommendations would you have, to have, a transformative economy?
So for me, I think economic transformation would get back to not focusing so much on taxing the economy, but first fueling it, incentivizing it, ensuring that there are incentives that will boost the economy, and then everything else will fall in place.
Now, what would you say this budget has in store for small, medium enterprises?
I wouldn't think there's so much of a focus, fortunately or unfortunately. When small, medium tax businesses are being talked about from a taxman's point of view, they're being pocketed into the informal sector and into maybe that part of the business community that doesn't pay taxes. But that is not the case. And we've seen that some SMEs are quite big, they are quite structured, they are formal. So that mentality may need to change, and probably the Revenue Authority may think of even having desks for SMEs, specifically focusing on SMEs, and trying to maybe look for them a more simpler tax regime.
Now, what should Wanjiku expect out of this particular budget?
I think the expectation is that generally there will be increase in taxes. We already saw an increase from 5 to 15% in capital gains tax. We are seeing deficits. So we are going to see a lot more measures that are geared towards raising more revenue. Low-hanging fruit for government, excise duty. Always get the beers, the soft drinks, alcoholic beverages, spirits, wines, all that. Tobacco, and increase the tax rate. There is the annual inflationary rate. That is a given, it will be added. The indirect taxes, I think those have reached their bliss point or the point of no return, so not much there. But the low-hanging fruits lie within areas like excise duty, instituting some more around the income taxes, like the one on derivatives, interest restrictions, so that the profits are more and there's more tax from an income tax perspective, capital gains tax. All those will remain, and the scope of VAT on foreign suppliers, which is digital supplies in a marketplace, has also increased. In the past years, it was only for business to customer transactions, but recently it has brought into the ambit of tax business to business transactions. So that is one that is also going to bring in a bit of some revenue. The difference is now, if it is between B2B businesses, then the business that is in country can be able to claim that VAT. But one should remember that some of the businesses are not registered for VAT, so tax would be achieved by the government.
Parting shot, Madam Hadija.
I'm hoping that the plan for the new government to tax first wealth, property income, and lastly trade will come through. I haven't seen anything on paper around how they will achieve that. But first of all, it's a good way to think. Trade should come last in the rankings of taxation. So I'm positive that as we move on, things will get better, and the economy will boost, will grow and bloom.
There you have it. We have been speaking to Hadija Nanyamo, who is a tax partner at Ernst & Young, in regard to what you need to know ahead of the budget presentation that is set to, direct and give guidance as to how government is going to spend the 3.63 trillion shillings that it proposes to actually spend in the coming financial year. You've been watching Prime Edition. I'm Regina Manyara.
Nafasi yako ya kuwa mdosi wako. Jiunge na washindi, tufanye biashara. Kuwa mshindi. Outbreak.
Hey, Buda. Umekama na mazawadi za mafanze? Wachana na hizi. Nataka nikuambia kwamba Dunda ndio hivyo tena imerejea ndani ya KBC Channel 1 kuanzia Ijumaa hii, itakuwa ndani. Au niaje bro?
Nakwambia maswala, michakato, habari, mitazamo, mahojiano na masuala yote ya sport unayopokea moja kwa moja kutoka Dunda ndani ya KBC Channel 1 kila siku ya Ijumaa.
Viwanjani. Na ndio sababu nakufahamisha kwamba mtu wangu bwana, kuanzia Ijumaa hii, yani tunakuletea soka ya humu nchini, barani Afrika na zaidi ya yote kutoka kule ughaibuni. Sawa. Lakini yote tisa bwana, usisahau ya kwamba mashabiki pia huku nako hatujawaacha nyuma. Au sio? Zawadi hapa ni bila free of charge. Yani bila malipo. Kila shabiki atakuwa anapata zawadi. Ndio sababu nakuambia kwamba kuanzia Ijumaa hii, Dunda viwanjani ndani ya KBC Channel 1. Mambo moto, au sio?
Sports News is brought to you by Outbreak.
Kurumisha ndege. Aviator instant game. Be a daring pilot and earn by how much high you can lift the plane. The higher you fly, the higher your win. The sky is the limit. Outbreak.
A very good evening to you. My name is Daniel Wahome, and let's get the sport. FKF Premier League giant AFC Leopards have urged the Football Kenya Federation to reconsider the decision by the Leagues and Competitions Committee, which awarded Kakamega Homeboys maximum points in their abandoned match played at the Buhungu Stadium last weekend. The committee made the decision this week to hand Homeboys maximum points and fine Leopards $500,000 shillings following crowd trouble that caused the match to be abandoned in the 34th minute.
Just 24 hours after Football Kenya Federation Leagues and Competitions Committee handed Kakamega Homeboys maximum points, stripped Leopards 3 points and fined them $500,000 shillings, AFC Leopards have broken their silence on the ruling, saying that it was unfair to the club. According to Leopards, the club presented evidence to highlight the inadequate security and poor officiating that caused the crowd trouble at the Bukungu Stadium, forcing the match to be abandoned in the first half, as Homeboys led 1-0 and their evidence was disregarded by the committee.
We expect a fair and impartial hearing when our team's interests are at stake, like now, and we believe that the decision of FKF League and Competition Committee in this case has failed to meet this expectation. We urge the FKF to review and reconsider the decision.
Leopards also claimed that the club was not aware of the evidence forwarded to the committee by Homeboys.
We also call for greater transparency and fairness in the decision-making process of the FKF League and Competitions Committee. We remain resolute in our pursuit of justice and will not rest until our concerns are addressed and our team's rights are protected.
In addition to the committee awarding Homeboys the 3 points and 2 goals, stripping Leopards 3 points plus fining them 500,000 shillings, it ordered they play their next 4 league matches behind closed doors and that it caters or refunds incurred medical costs by centre referee Michael Obuya, who was assaulted by a section of alleged Leopards fans in the match. AFC Leopards are currently 6th on the table with 40 points, and should the decision by the committee stand, it will mean they will play against KCB, City Stars, Nzoia Sugar and Sofapaka without fans, but their Mashemeji derby to be hosted by Gor Mahia in between those matches will have spectators.
And in addition to the sanctions that were issued, one that has been mentioned is that the coaching staff, Patrick Ozems and Lawrence Webo, are also to face the FKF disciplinary committee. Now, a team of 97 swimmers selected from various schools in the country will participate in the Kampala Invitational Swimming Championship, set to be held this Sunday at the Kampala Aquatic Academy in Uganda.
Includes 30 swimmers from this year's Mount Kenya Swimming Block overall champions St. Christopher School in Nanyuki. Laikipia County Women Representative Jane Kagiri, who flagged off the team, says the county supports the growth of budding talents, calling for more investments in the sport. The remaining swimmers were selected from Lukenya School, Umoja Sharks, Porterhouse School and Pioneer Girls High School. The team will use the event sanctioned by the Uganda Swimming Federation as a ramp-up event as they prepare to compete in the Hamilton Aquatics Championships in June this year in Dubai. Swimming coaches from the participating nations Uganda, Kenya and Rwanda will also take up a coaches exchange program to refine their skills. Nora Mwangi for Prime Edition.
And now the fourth leg of the NCBA Golf Series will be held this Saturday at the Windsor Golf Hotel and Country Club. Over 150 golfers are expected to take part in the event to compete for the slots to play at the series grand finale later this year.
At least 150 golfers are expected to take to the course in the fourth round of the NCBA Golf Series at the Windsor Golf Club. The overall gross winners will secure slots to play at the grand finale. The latest additions to the list of qualifiers coming from the Limuru leg are Peter Muchangi, who emerged as the overall gross winner, John Karaoke, who took home the men's category, Noni Wanye, who emerged as top in the ladies competition, and Jelani Kehanya, who won the juniors category. This year's series features 17 seniors qualify events and a junior tournament to be held at Nyali Golf Club. NCBA Group Retail Director Tyrus Muthiga says the event aims at providing an avenue for golfers to own their skills. The grand finale will be held in December at the Sigona Golf Club, with the overall winner, men winner, and lady winner pocketing the top prize of 100,000 shillings each.
And the 2023 edition of the National Roller Skating Championship will be held between the 22nd and the 23rd of this month at the Treasury Square and the Technical University of Mombasa. The competitions will feature freestyle skating, rollball and speed skating. The annual event, which was held last year at the Kasarani Aquatic Stadium parking lot, will be used to select players who will join the national team for future international competitions. Winners will also walk away with medals, trophies and cash prizes. And that's the sport for tonight. Remember, more action coming over this weekend, and there's lots to talk about, yes, from the local scene and also Sunday's London Marathon. My name is Daniel Wahome. Have a good evening.
Sports News was brought to you by Mozart Bet.
Nafasi yako ya kuwa mdosi wako.
Jiunge na washindi tufanye biashara. Kuwa mshindi. Mozart Bet.
We now come to the end of our bulletin. John Wafula is asking about the story on entrepreneurship, young and industrious, the segment that we have every Thursday. We'll definitely be having that segment for you next week. I will let the business desk know that you missed that segment. From all of us, we do want to wish you a very good night. And for our Muslim family and friends, we wish you Happy Eid.